Children who know themselves and love themselves and also know who their friends are in all aspects of their social and personal identities, they can kind of trust the space they're in and trust the people are around to really do big work, to learn and feel comforted and safe and brave and courageous.
We know that when children know who they are, that they're not going to be susceptible to being pulled this way or being pulled that way, that nobody will be able to tell them who they are because they know who they are. I'm located right now in Giwa Pueblo, which is one of the 19 Indian pueblos in New Mexico located between Albuquerque and Santa Fe. I teach at Keres Children's Learning Center, our language immersion Montessori school, where 50% of the instruction is delivered in Keres and 50% of the instruction is delivered in English. Eventually, I became a part of what is called Montessori for Social Justice and just became more and more aware of how our work fits into anti-bias and anti-racism. And erasure is the #1 issue that we deal with in America as Indigenous people. History is written by who is writing all these textbooks, and it's not our people. The majority of people writing those textbooks are white people.
Tragojes,
Rawachet,
tragojes,
rawachet, hasitushe awasani. And so you'll see in the lesson that I spoke to the children in Keres, and then Katie is our English speaking teacher, and her job is to stay in English. Where you catch, where you tell you cut. Gata hin say this suit that hati hamayuk ni ashpat sutus. Yes, had nami thick nayapatia sutus. Katie thick say hopa.
Thank you so much, Trisha. So we're also going to take a minute to look at this quote from Governor James Hina from Tesuque Pueblo. And I'll put it in the chat too so that you can look at it, but I'm going to read it. The Pueblo people would not be here if it were not for the revolt of 1680. We would have lost our culture and disappeared.
So in the elementary classroom and in the lesson that you saw us talking about the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. And I never learned about that, and I never read about it in any part of my schooling, in elementary, in middle school, in high school. The way I learned about that was from my grandfather, from my mother, from my aunts, from my people. We have a oral tradition. Our language isn't written, it's just spoken. However, our children should have access, especially something like the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, because that was resistance there, and it was resistance that was successful and turned the tide of how history would go for the betterment of our people. We just told them, we're going to teach you and share with you an event that happened in 1680. So of course you have to do the math with them first and get them familiar with the math and do some math around that so that they can have a concept and imagine like 400 years ago, just so they can make that connection. And then say, I don't want to say too much more. We're going to show you this video. One of the documentaries that they got to watch is a documentary that was done by Amy Villarreal, along with support from Limo Kino Pueblo people like Limo Kino of Santa Clara Pueblo, Conroy Chino of Acoma Pueblo, and whoever else she got support from. But that film is called Frontera, but it is about the Pueblo Revolt, and we showed that to our children at the beginning when we started it off, and And so after we showed them the documentary, we just asked for reflections, and they were so excited, and they could already see themselves in the video, even in how people were dressed, because we dress like that, for certain ceremonies or rituals that we have. And so at that point, on a certain level, we just had to follow the children and what they were interested in, to get it going. Of course, we became more explicit about what we wanted to make sure they learn, but the most important lesson that we want our children to know, the most important takeaway, is that this event happened, that our ancestors had leaders, that this was a really well executed plan. We want them to know who Popeye was. Our people were able to drive out the Spaniards for 12 years. Now you know about the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, and we'll keep expanding on the lesson, but they are old enough now to continue the research on their own. We really believe that if our ancestors didn't fight the way they did in the revolt, we wouldn't still have our language and our culture and our way of life as we still know it today. So having the blessing of being able to still live in modern life, but still being connected so much to the ancient. And even though it's a hard life, it's a beautiful life, and it's a life that we want our children to know. Being able to deliver that lesson to the children has been so grounding. It's been so affirming for the children. They've been so excited to learn. But as a class, they presented on the Pueblo Revolt, and they presented it in our language to their parents and families, which was really a beautiful thing to witness. There's such this binary in America of white and black, and so because that binary consists and is just really powerful, insidious in so many ways, not even giving any consideration to, well, where are the Indigenous people? Nobody ever asks about the Indigenous people or Indigenous children. Make sure to use lessons written by Indigenous people. Debbie Reese's American Indian Children's Literature blog, does amazing work there. On the website indigenouscheerleader.com, there is a list of resources and websites of where to go to find curriculum written by Indigenous people. Part of getting things right in America is telling the whole truth and including Indigenous peoples. I don't want to just say our voices, but all the truth. And yes, the land acknowledgements, but what's the action that's going to happen with that? All children need these lessons and the curriculum around Indigenous history and our contemporary existence and our hopes for the future.